What's going on, beautiful J4 family community? Whether you're in LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, thank you guys so much for kind of plugging in on a Sunday. I always enjoy J4 opportunities. We have a couple of formats. We just recently did a Future Fathers conversation, but today we are going to have father to father conversations. Before I begin, I want to send a special shout out for fathers looking for community, particularly Black fathers. I recommend that you check out Black Fathers on Facebook. It's an outstanding community where men are genuinely discussing and seeking counsel and motivating each other. So I'd highly encourage you guys to check that out if that's of interest to you. Why we do this? I'm doing this because fathers need community, Pedrick. Fathers need confidants. We need folks to talk it out with. We have several influencers in the father space to include our own if they were there, or in some case they give example if they weren't there. We might have older brothers and uncles and those kind of things, but fatherhood is a day-to-day kind of management. Sometimes we do it wonderfully, and sometimes we mess it up royally. And so J4 Conversations in its functional format is a conversation between two fathers and two sons about this beautiful thing called life. But every now and then we'll kind of do some solo dolo activities, and today is one of those. So beautiful community. Without further ado or delay, I want to introduce you all to a good friend of mine. It didn't start that way. We weren't enemies. He just wasn't a friend at the time. He was a part of an organization. In fact, we're representing it here, AMASU, African American Men of ASU, an organization that was affiliated with the Multicultural Student Center. And Pedrick, being the dynamic, intellectually, culturally centered human being that he is, was a very active, engaged member in that. And so I had a chance to see him as an undergrad come of age. And now, as we would get into it, he is knocking on the door of a PhD. What's good, Pedrick? How you doing, brother?
Oh man, thanks for the warm intro. I'm doing well. How are you?
It's good, man. Sunday, I got my coffee, representing my Sunday vibe. I'm in the microphone. My daughters, I just watched a volleyball game in Atlanta. You know, the beauty of technology. She's out there at a tournament, club volleyball. So she was putting it on them. She's an outside hitter, did her thing.
All
And
right.
so, baby girl's winning and we winning, Pedro.
I like it. That's what I like to hear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who are here or will be here, feel free to pose any questions you might have or comments. We truly appreciate that. Pedro, where you from, brother? Where you from?
Oh man, 702 Las Vegas, Nevada.
Las Vegas, born and raised?
Born and raised. I don't go back. Won't go back much, but it'll be a part of me to the day I die.
What? I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Man, I grew up in Vegas too, man. Middle school. No, I had two stints. My dad's a military guy. I was there young through I think kindergarten through second grade. Then I went to Italy for my dad's overseas assignment, and then came back in middle school and high school. Went to Jim Bridger in El Dorado.
Okay. Yep. So I played ball at a rival school of El Dorado. My dad actually played at El Dorado.
Okay.
So he lived that far, and I know Jim Bridger very well. I think he actually went to Jim Bridger too.
Okay, I'm probably your father's age set.
Yes,
We
right
want to
on the
run the
east side.
same circus streets. You know, when the tourists would come in, they drop their kids off at circus, and that's where we would go hang out. Just make the lap.
We had good Halloween. We had good Halloween fun at Circus.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So just not to belabor that point, but Vegas has always been interesting. It was weird because the city really never slept. You know, the social patterns were always very interesting to me. You know, you would go to a club and come out in daylight. I'm like, what is this about, right? And so it was good, while it was then. But I'm perhaps similar to yourself. I go back and visit my dad every now and then, but no, I couldn't grow up there anymore.
Yeah, no, you're right. Vegas was the first time I realized that partying in Vegas is different from partying in Phoenix.
Right.
Phoenix club closed at 2 a.m.
Right.
Go home and get you Taco Bell or whatever, Filiberto's, and you're good. Well, this one time I went partying with my brother, and I think we didn't even leave the house until midnight.
Yeah.
Drinks there, and then went to the club, and then we went to an after spot after the club. Needless to say, I ended up throwing up on my mom's white carpet, and she was
okay. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. What? This one time I went party with my Oh, I think I got you on echo. My bad. Hold on. I'm having technical difficulties here. All right, we good?
Yep,
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right. So what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas unless it's on J4.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah, absolutely.
tell us where you're at now. What part of the world you in?
So right now I'm currently in Germany, similar to your dad and his overseas assignment. That's where I am right now.
You're in Germany?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What you doing out there that you can share?
Oh man, so every day is trying to keep the world safe, trying to keep the country safe, trying to bring new advances to our defense, national security systems. That's what I do.
Well, beautiful, man. We appreciate your service and your security. All right. In
Absolutely.
the spirit of the conversation, talk to me. How many children do you have? What are their ages? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I have two boys. Two
All
boys.
right.
One 15. He just turned 15 6 days ago. And I have a 2-year-old whose birthday is in November.
15 and 2.
Yeah, 15 and
So
2.
you have the gamut, right? You have full fledged teen in the midst of puberty, and then you got the terrible twos raging in your house.
Yeah, not by choice, but that's just how my life happened.
That's how it happened.
Yeah, that's
So
how it happened.
you had your first one when?
I had my first when I was 16. It was the
Okay,
spring. I might have been 16, 15. It was the spring semester of my freshman year, I believe.
a teen father, huh?
Teen father.
Now, how did that work out, or what was that conversation like? Was it tough?
Oh man, yes. In hindsight, it absolutely was. So I'll tell you, my dad was in the Navy, and I
Okay,
think at the time he was overseas. He had to
okay.
do his annual training. They went overseas for something, and so my son's mother. I think we had kind of had some conversations, maybe that she may be pregnant, but
Mm-hmm.
I think in full transparency, I think this had happened before between us, and
Mm,
like either something happened or whatever it was, it didn't materialize into a child or to a baby.
okay.
So I'm not thinking anything. I'm thinking this is the second time, like this kind of it is what it is. And so I get a phone call at night. This is when we still had house phones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's me and my mom, or my mom and I at home. And I answer the phone, maybe 9 o'clock at night. I answer the phone, and it's my son's mother's mother. And she says, uh, "Can I speak to your mom?" Or it's my mom's her first name.
So the
And I
mama's
hung it.
mama,
Yeah,
mama's
I hang
mama's
up.
on the phone. Want to talk to your mama?
Yeah, I hang up the phone because I immediately knew whose voice it was. I had met her before.
Wow.
She calls back probably 2 minutes later, less than that. She says, "Pedro, can I talk to your mom?"
Put your mama on the phone.
Ah, okay. So I give the phone to my mom, and that's when she tells my mom that her daughter is pregnant
Mm,
by me. And so my mom, she just looks and she just starts hysterically crying.
wow.
And at this point, I still don't understand the magnification of what is going to transpire. All I
Right.
know is don't tell my dad because he gonna beat me when he get home.
Mm,
And so somehow some conversation between my mom and my dad occurs while he's overseas. This is when they start calling cards.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just remember my dad getting home a few days later, and we didn't talk for probably a week straight.
Mm.
And I
He
thought that
flew
would
in
be
for the purpose of the conversation.
I think he was done. I think it was at the
Okay.
end of his training. So he was coming back stateside, and I thought at first it would be cool not having to really face reality and not speak with them. But it's weird when you live in the same house with somebody, you
Mm.
sit at the dinner table with them, you pass them in the hallway, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't say a word to you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
That
we
that
kind of
that
did
that
that.
it just makes the scene heavy, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes your words have impact, but sometimes the absence of words, especially, that's often a way in which couples will show
Mhm.
frustration with each other, right? They deny conversation, right? But then you
Yeah.
have a parent that does that for a child or something of major magnitude that can be gut wrenching.
Yeah, it was. It was, and as a 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't even know what to say. But we eventually had a conversation. I think he just said, I think his first words were, "So you went and got somebody pregnant, huh?" I think that's the first words he said. And
Uh-huh.
whatever happened after that.
Wow. All right. So I mean, and not to belabor it, but that's uncommon, right? I mean, it's not unheard of, but
Right.
to have a baby in high school and uh that had to be a hell of a responsibility put on you, right?
Absolutely. I tell people all the time when we have these conversations that at the time I didn't think I thought my life was over. I didn't think that
Yeah.
I was going to be able to make it out. But now looking back at it, that was the thing that I needed, because you wouldn't see me, as you mentioned earlier, on the precipice of a PhD. I don't think I would be here if I didn't have that responsibility. That responsibility molded me and forced me to grow up faster than I probably wanted to, and
Mm-hmm.
probably what was destined for my life. But if that had not happened, I probably wouldn't even been at ASU. I probably would have went to San Diego State.
Huh.
And so everything, everything in my life from that day on, uh, was orchestrated and happened for a reason. And I've, it's impacted me positively, to this day at 30.
Wow. So in many instances that could have derailed a young person, both you
Right.
and the young lady, right? That could have typecast you in some certain kind of way, but you saying for you it centered you. How did it center you? Was that parental love? Was that just an internal fortitude, or was it that fact that you had life in front of you that reoriented your life?
I think it was more so that I knew the only thing I knew was to be a good father,
Mm,
because my father was a good father to me. And at that time, my older brother, he had my nephew at that time as well. So that's kind of all I knew. I
mm-hmm.
knew I had a child on the way, and I knew, like, okay, I got to provide for this child. I have to get out here and go do something. And so there was never an option of, like, not being there, because that's all I knew. All I knew was my dad being in my life. And so that focus, that kind of responsibility, the heaviness of the responsibility. I couldn't just go and wild out and do things that my peers could in high school. I couldn't just go and stay out till 2 in the morning, uh,
Right.
at a party. I can remember having football games, and rushing for X amount of yards on Fridays, and then Saturdays I'm at
Uh-huh.
work,
Right.
because I got to get a check, because babies need food, they need Pampers, they need
Mm-hmm.
breast milk. I mean, not breast milk. They need Similac at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just that kind of orchestration, that helped me, and then that ultimately impacted me going to ASU, because I
Okay.
knew I wanted to make something of myself. Um, and that's kind of how the road just unfolded for me.
Well, Pedro, man, that's a testament to an internal fortitude, right? That probably is in part genetics, your DNA, but also a familial community, right? Your parents obviously were frustrated and irritated, and whatever the societal interpretation of that is. But it sounds like after a little bit of tough, silent love, and then a little bit of probably some frustrated, elevated conversation, they kind of rallied for you, and here you are today, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it wasn't for them, again, wouldn't be here, literally, because they birthed me.
Yeah, yeah.
But they allowed me to go away to school. They
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to go and really learn and get an education and meet folks, who my mentors, like yourself, like Tafari,
Mm-hmm.
like Hotep, like Chukwuemeka. They
Yeah.
well, Dr. Chukwuemeka.
Mm-hmm.
But they allowed me to go to school and get that experience. They allowed me to learn what it means to be black.
Right.
Going to Vegas, we didn't know that.
Right.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day that we didn't even know about HBCUs in Vegas.
Right.
Had no idea.
Right.
And it's where I learned all these things at ASU. So if it had not been for them allowing me to leave Vegas, go make something of myself, them kind of hold the fort down and take care of my child while I was gone,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be on this conversation right now.
Well, hey, shout out to the parents, or in this case, grandparents, for
Yeah.
for stepping in ways perhaps a little earlier than normal, but to ensure that their baby has remnants of a full developed life, and then it comes full circle. So are you and your 15-year-old, y'all bonded, y'all connected? Well, how's that?
Yeah, we have. It's different. The reason why I smile, because he's grown up with me.
Okay.
I had I received full custody of him when he was 8, in the middle of his second grade school year,
Okay.
uh, when I was in Phoenix, Arizona. And so him, just as much as I've grown, he's been there, right there. He's been with me. So whether it's growing from careers, growing from knowledge, growing from degrees, uh,
Mm-hmm.
he has been there every step of the way. Now, we're getting into the teenage and
Yep.
father,
Yep.
I want to say, conflict. And so it's interesting. Every day is different. Like today, the conversation, we're cooking dinner, and him and our family, as a family, we're talking about, what does he want to do after school, after high school?
Mm-hmm.
And if athletics doesn't work out the way he wants it to do, if he the way that he wants it to, what's the backup plan?
Right.
And so he's in ROTC now. He really enjoys it. But
Mm-hmm.
then, his mom and I are having conversations, and like, well, what if college isn't even for you?
Yeah.
What if you don't want to go to college?
Right.
We're still overseas, or you're gonna stay and live up under here and not do anything. Like, so those
Mm-hmm.
are the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that we were having today. So it's interesting, having a teenager. It's not something
Yeah.
I've done before, so it's all new
Yeah.
territory.
It's all good training for that 2-year-old. As fathers and mothers, we can't predict the future, right?
Right.
But in the moment, frequent, often conversations help shapes the future, perhaps in a positive way, right? You mentioned college, maybe not college, right? There's an openness to that, but just sort of in the questions you ask, and then the 15-year-old in their own language, they respond back, but you're creating sort of boundaries, right? Unasked questions just leave the potential so large. But in your questions that you ask, you're actually narrowing kind of the options, right? Military, college, something there locally in the community, whatever the case may be. But in your questions, despite the answer, you're framing the direction in some capacity. And you don't want to overstep and impose what you want that outcome to be. But I think the outcome, hopefully positive, is shaped in parents intentionally forming questions to their beautiful seeds in real time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And something, when you were just saying that right now, something that hit me from the last J4, or maybe it was a couple of J4 conversations ago that you were talking about. I think it was your youngest son is into art.
My oldest boy is he's a what do you call it? He's a creative,
Yeah,
opera, plays, comic book writing, that kind of stuff.
got it. Okay, so I remember you were talking about when he was younger, you and your wife kind of giving him a space and giving him an environment and introducing him into that kind of creative atmosphere, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
drawing, illustrating, coloring, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of not forcing him into it, but creating an environment so that if it's something that he does like, he can go and do it and pursue it. And
Mm-hmm.
mommy got it right there. The conversation with my oldest was introducing him to a new sport.
Mm-hmm.
Overseas, lacrosse is a pretty big thing, and even on the
Okay.
East, lacrosse is pretty big.
Right.
And so, I'm kind of battling and going back and forth between forcing my son to play lacrosse this spring season or
Uh-huh.
track,
Right.
because he's a long distance runner, and
Right.
long distance running usually doesn't translate over to football the way that
Uh,
he wants it to. And so it's kind of that same thing. And I remember the conversation that you were mentioning on J4 about, your kids, their experiences shape their minds. And
mm-hmm.
when you introduce them to new experiences, to new environments, to new neighborhoods, new communities,
Yep.
it expands their mind so that they can figure out and see themselves in different lights. And so that's kind of the thing that I'm wrestling with today, is just, do I force him to
Uh,
to play that sport, or do I let him go and run track?
right. Right. And I appreciate you always kind of listening to it. At some point you determine kind of what your children are exposed to, and they just willingly blindly kind of follow, right? But the fact that you're using the word force, which is mean, really want him to do this. Probably implicitly there's some pushback, right? There's some, well, no, dad, I don't want to do that, right? But that's when the young people are finding their voice and they get to a point to where they want to have a little bit of control in
Yeah.
their own management, right? So I think as parents, maybe we can just tell them why we really want them to do something at a certain stage of life, and do that with some depth and some thinking and some logic, and just kind of lay it out. And then, maybe give a timeline. Hey, let's just try it for a period of time. If it doesn't work out, at least you've had the exposure, right? So you're framing it in a way that is not so much do, but consider in a very intentful kind of way. And then hopefully they'll kind of come to that conclusion. But underlying everything you just said, yeah, exposure, exposure, exposure to a range of different things. You're in Germany. Oh man, the worldview that your sons will have just from that experience will be tremendously larger than a person that just lives a narrow zip code kind of life. And the
Right.
more exposure, the broader the worldview, and that certainly has impact. If you guys are just joining us, thank you guys so much. We're with Pedrick Hall talking about his journey from a teen father into a PhD, soon to be. Let's shift now. So you got the 15-year-old. Y'all are working through it as you should be. Then you got a little two. You got the two, right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going well. We just got through potty training.
Okay.
Something that I didn't think we were gonna make it through at all.
He's
I was
peeing
ready
all
to
on the
give
house.
up. I was ready to give up. I was telling my wife, I said, what if he just doesn't get it? Like,
Right.
what if potty training just isn't for him? And usually, like most things in life, especially being in a fraternity, usually when you're about to quit, it's usually when the breakthrough is just on the other side.
Right.
So,
Right.
we pushed through it, and now I mean he's a champ. He tells us all the time when he has to go to the bathroom, and he'll
Mm-hmm.
go run over and use the potty, and then he'll run around and say, "Mommy, Daddy, I peed." So the 2-year-old is interesting. He's picked up on some German language,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really excited to see how this experience shapes him. You and I were talking off camera before about how you still remember the formidable years of being in Italy and
Mm-hmm.
kind of growing up and having those friends. So that's really what I'm excited to see, how this experience impacts him when he's 16, when he's
Mm-hmm.
21, when he's
Mm-hmm.
30, and we
Mm-hmm.
can have those conversations. Hey, Dad, Mom, remember when we were in Germany that time, and X, Y, and Z, and I still remember this from when I was 6 and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
No,
fun. It's fun with me.
that 2 to 15, that's tremendous. The fact that the 2-year-old is having the experience, it'll be normalized in his development, I would imagine, to where the 15-year-old kind of moved at some point and sees it from a predominantly American lens. You'll be
Yep.
surprised at the multiplicity, the duality that your 2-year-old will have. And in many ways, because that was just normalized at a young age, it'll definitely affect their worldview. I imagine it'll affect the worldview around race, around nationhood, around culture. That's one thing. Sort of, I was a biracial kid, and we always had this in and out dynamic. But then you throw in an international experience, and it kind of puts you in a different state. And so when you're trying to interpret American youth dynamics, particularly when I came back to the United States, I always felt like this outsider. And it wasn't until college that exposure kind of found a lane. I was able to anchor in a black space, but I was always pulling from, broader exposures than perhaps some of my peers who didn't have that fortunate opportunity of travel. So 2 to 15, you go from teen father, but now you're knocking on the door of a PhD. Tell me about your educational pathway.
Yeah. So I got both my degrees, Arizona State. I see my hoodie here. And so I can tell you, I never desired or started out to be this deep in school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the story of how I got to my PhD in a minute, but I go to school, I get my bachelor's, and at that point, I think the people around me, my mentors again, getting a master's was just like, it was just something that I was going to do.
Right.
Uh, it wasn't like I didn't know what I wanted to do, or I wasn't ready to go into the real world, as a lot of people say. I had a good mentor of mine. His name T. Willer. but I call him Antonio.
Yeah,
Uh,
T.
he he was getting his master's, and he allowed me to come to class with him a couple of times while I was an undergrad.
Okay.
I got to meet the faculty, meet the staff, and I ended up saying, "Hey, this is something I want to do." So I ended up getting my master's. I go and work, and I moved to the DC area, DMV, and I had this idea. Nope, one of my students, one of my former mentees, she graduates from law school. She graduated from Howard University Law School.
Okay.
Uh, and so we go out, we celebrate, we have a good time. And I can tell you this is exactly real. For the people who know this story, they will say this is exactly true how I said it. And so I said, man, we're having a good time. We're partying. We see the family, we see the love. Spring graduation ceremonies are just something that's undeniable and hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to myself, man, I want to throw a graduation party.
For her.
No, for me.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm like, man, I want to have a graduation party again. I want to have that feeling of just celebration.
Oh, that was your motivation.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
And so at this point, like, I'm like, well, to get two master's degrees, that kind of doesn't make sense to me. The
Right.
only thing is a PhD, but I don't really know what I want to get it in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I really never thought about being a doctor. Um, I'm like, but that's the only way I'm gonna have celebrate graduation, so I'm
Right.
gonna do it. And
Right.
so it was from that point, the only reason why I wanted to get a PhD was so that I could throw a graduation spring party. I kid you not. That is the
Oh,
100% honest truth. Now,
wow.
since I've been in it,
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of understood the magnitude of this thing. I have different reasons why now, but that's exactly how it started. I kid you
Well,
not.
the things that motivate us, right? If you want to have a party so you can celebrate with your peoples,
That's
it's
it.
motivated, we'll take it, brother.
That is it.
So,
That is the only reason why I wanted to
wow.
even started looking at it.
Wow. 30% of the people over the age of 25 will have a bachelor's. About 50% will have a master. I mean, some education, associate level kind of stuff. And then 7% is the percentage for a master's degree. And then you're about to enter into the 2%, right? And so when you're giving your graduation speech, you say, I'm here because I wanted to party. Oh, if you
Man.
just joining us, we are here with future Dr. Patrick Hall, motivated by the Get Down. All right, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Patrick, tell me, how is your children's childhood different from yours?
Oh man, these kids are spoiled.
Talk to
That's
him.
the
You daddy,
easiest way
you
I can
spoiled
say
them.
it. That's the easiest way. I mean, I guess it's, of course it's my fault, but they're spoiled and they're privileged. We have this conversation all the time about the generation before myself and then our generation and what is the next generation going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
specifically when it comes to working. My parents, the only thing they knew was get a job, work for X amount of years until you retire, and then that's it. They didn't know anything about investing. They didn't know anything about, stocks. It
Right,
was get a job, get a pension, and then that's it. My dad
right.
is a retired detective from Las Vegas, and so that's all he knew. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, growing up, my childhood was my dad worked. He had my older brother and my older sister from a different relationship, so there was some sort of child support over there. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, my dad had two families that he had to support.
Okay.
And so he worked a lot of overtime. He worked a lot of overtime, just so we could stay afloat and stay above water. And
Right.
that's kind of all I knew. Of course, he was there, sporting events, athletic events.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he was a detective, so a lot of my events he ended up working and watching me play at the same time, which I
Okay.
thought was,
Get paid to watch his boy. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was the coolest thing to
Mm-hmm.
do. But that was kind of it, because he spent so much time working in his military assignments. That was my childhood, and my kids now, they benefit from the knowledge that I have. They benefit from the knowledge that both my wife and I have.
Mm-hmm.
They benefit from the different tax brackets that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have these things
Mm-hmm.
now, so I would say my generation isn't focused on working. more so trying to work for yourself,
Okay.
or trying to figure out how to leverage the work that you do and to make it go further.
Right.
How do you invest so that you don't have to work as hard as our parents did?
Right.
And maybe we can retire early. Different things like that. It just my kids benefit from all those things. At the time
Mm-hmm.
when I was 18, neither of my parents had a college degree. They had
Okay.
went to college but never finished.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the first person out of my immediate family to get a degree. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got my master's degree, and now I'll be the first person in my immediate, I think, really in my entire family that
Right.
has a doctorate. And
Yep.
so my parents have went back to school now. They finished their degrees. I think they both have master's degrees.
Okay.
Um, and so the education is catching up to them now,
Mm-hmm.
but they're older. And so, my kids, yeah, they benefit from all that knowledge. They benefit from, like you said, these experiences overseas.
Right.
They just live a lot different life than I did growing up.
That's a hell of a articulation. First, shout out to both your parents, man. Very much. Yeah, I think I'm around your parents' age. Um, the if you say kind of what is the purpose of a parent, right? Obviously, is to provide provision. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those kind of things. But fundamentally, it's to, I believe, is to create your family's name, right? So, for example, Jones, is my last name. You can go back X number of generations, and then I imagine you're getting into the enslavement period, but your name precedes you generationally, right? And at some point, one generation will pass away and transition and go dance with the elders, but then the children will live on and they'll live a full life, and then you go on, right? So, what is the internal motivator, right? Is the motivator to just simply live a life in a moment, or is it to raise your children so that they have circumstances that are at least incrementally progressed beyond your station at that particular time? In this theory, that would mean your great grandchildren will have a different pedigree. They'll have a different orientation to money, a different orientation to education, or they will have advanced, right? Now, I don't know at what point that ends, but I think a guiding drive for parents should be or ought to be, and I'd be interested in your thoughts there, ought to be to sort of just out of pure will and action, is to create a better circumstances for your children. And interestingly enough, and I'm experiencing this, I grew up in, my parents got divorced when I was 16, military base,
Mhm.
apartments, trailers, those kind of things. But my dad changed my life circumstances through his life lived. Now my kids have a quasi upper middle income kind of life, and they live in that with certain kind of frustrations because they have no comparison
Mhm.
to a life they never experienced, right? But despite that, the motivator in many instances is to improve the condition of your children through your immediate acts and motions, of course, with your family and extended network. What, do you think that is a proper motivation, or maybe, I don't know, is there ego in that? What do you think?
If you said there was an ego in that, I wouldn't fault you on that. I wouldn't disagree. I
Hmm.
think sometimes the ego and the level of ego that we have is needed and it's necessary.
Right.
I think it also depends on what you do with that ego. If you take the ego and you think that you become entitled and you think that things should just happen to you or they should occur to you because of that, I think that's
Right.
probably where we'll go wrong at.
Right.
But you hit the nail right on the head. My job is to change the trajectory of my family, and
Hmm.
not just for me, not just for my kids, but for their kids.
Hmm.
I'll tell you that I am at the age of, let's see, I'm 30 now. I want to say maybe 26, 27, may
Hmm.
have been 25. I was 100% debt free.
At
And
25.
at 25, I mean,
Boom.
student loans, credit cards,
Boom.
automobile loans, all of that was gone, except the mortgage, which, we
Yeah.
worked on that too.
Right.
But for the most part, outside of a mortgage, I was 100% debt free.
Boom.
And so, based off of that and the knowledge and the education that I learned about finances, that I learned about, how to position your monetary assets, I have now changed my children's trajectory.
Yes, you
Now,
have. Yes, you
if
have.
they don't do anything else, if they decide to go and make their own decisions, they have the right to do that fully. But the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge that I'm giving them, uh, I have done that job. If I didn't do anything else as a parent, if I
Yes,
didn't do
sir.
anything else as a father, I have changed my trajectory of my children's children. And I think that's something that I take a lot of pride in, a
Yes,
lot of
sir.
proudness in doing it, because like you said, that's what our parents taught us, to take what they had and
Mm-hmm.
you go further.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother used to say, she used to say, you don't have that big head on your shoulder for nothing. My parents made the sacrifices for me to go to school to learn all these different things. And
Right.
now what are you going to do with it? And so
Right.
now I've been able to, even help them out and give them some education and some lessons about, hey, here's a different way. Maybe here's something that I found that's worked for me. Maybe you might know something different. We have a conversation and you figure out what you do for you. But for my kids, they won't know anything else. Like you said,
Right.
for your children, they won't know anything else, and their choices, their life is up to them to decide how they take it. But you won't know anything else. You'll only know debt free living in this household, because that's what we do. That's what we preach. That's what we practice.
Yep.
Anything else outside of that, it's on you.
Well, congratulations to you in doing that, especially at a young age. Probably a lot of that was, self-taught or your peer group. I remember your class at ASU within a mile, so y'all were just kind of a cut above, asking grander questions and looking out for each other, and that's an outcome of it. And now your children and their children's children will be the beneficiaries of that. Um, if we were to offer maybe a father or a parent kind of strategy, is that to obsess about the adult child, obsess about your children's when they're adults.
Hmm.
And that obsession, I mean, a healthy obsession, that's a contradiction, but if you just constantly think in the now about who they're going to be when they're older, and just let that set in your mind and revisit it often, and then try to do your best to get to whatever that might look like. It's not so much a practical, tactical, incremental strategy. It is a philosophy or a value set that you then move from, and then things manifest from that. Yeah, yeah, that's heavy. All right,
Yeah.
let's keep pushing. You've talked about the joys of fathering. What are the challenges? What are the challenges of fathering?
Oh man, I think the first one is easy. Is there's no playbook for this thing,
Yeah.
and no matter how many people you look up to, you revere, that have children, your
Mm-hmm.
children will never be the same as them. So they can only offer their examples and their advice from their situation.
Okay.
They will never be an apples to apples, because your
Right.
kids are
Right.
different. The
Right.
way you think is different. The way they think is different. The way you talk is different. Your household is different.
Right.
So you kind of have to just. It's a lot of what I do at work. You make the best decision off of the information that you have at that time. You
Yeah.
try to get all these different pieces, and you assess to figure out a priority and which one is more important than the other was. You cancel out the noise, and you say,
Yep.
based off of what I know right now, I don't have
Yep.
any other knowledge. I'm going to make my decision off of this. And if something goes good, cool, we made the right decision. If it goes bad, hopefully it's not catastrophic, to
Right.
where we can rebound, we can learn, and maybe we can pivot and come up with another game plan to kind of get out of it or get back on whatever track we were trying to go to.
Dope. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So yeah, we all outwardly look about and we see the best of the best. That's how people present themselves, at least in the social media sphere. But yeah, each child is unto himself, as well as the parents, right? Parents don't parent the same way, or they may attempt to it, but it's so nuanced and it has different outcomes. All right. Any other challenges that you can think of?
I think that the big challenge of mine right now is how to instill a blackness and a uh, I'm going to use the term black mindset, but really understanding who you are and what it means to be black
Mm,
in my teenage child who doesn't live a typical or familiar Black life.
It's traditional, right? Mm-hmm.
Correct. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the real things that I struggle with. My wife and I both struggle with, is just trying to make sure, like, how does he stay? How does he know who he is? How does he know the heritage, pedigree
Mm-hmm.
that he comes from? Not just my last name of Hall and our family, but what it means to be Black. How far do you go in teaching your child? When you get pulled over by the police, to put your hands at 10 and 2. Yes, sir.
Right.
No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And to know that you can do everything right and still end up in a pair of handcuffs. And
Sure.
then
Sure.
go even further to say, uh, don't argue, don't resist. That's what lawyers are for. We'll take care of that later. Your number one priority is to survive the encounter, because you can't
Hmm.
do anything. You can't do anything when you're face down, laid down on the pavement and they outlining your body in chalk.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of that's an overarching challenge. I don't think that there's any right answers for it. You
Correct.
kind of just have to go, and like I said, it's kind of, you go day by day.
Yeah, man. Let's stay there a minute. First, I want to acknowledge
Sure.
Lawrence Jordan. Appreciate you being in here, brother. Bubble parenting. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Lawrence. Feel free to offer a little more context in the comment section. Love to hear your perspective, or if that's a question. But yeah, teaching your children culture, right? And then there's
Mhm.
also a distinction between associating culture with fear of external entities. I always struggled with that. I've certainly had a cautionary conversation with my children about if they were to be pulled over, but more so about how to attempt to minimize that, right? Make sure your car, the lights are all where they need to be. Make sure you got your registration insurance, right? So that should you come up, it'll hopefully be as straightforward of as a transaction as possible. I'm also not oblivious to countless Black bodies who did that and suffered, a form of brutality in that space. But I always caution the exposure. I don't want them to associate Black maleness or Blackness with fear or an exclusive vulnerability to externalized threat. I don't think that does anything for their sense of self and esteem. And so, how
Agreed.
do you counter these messages with Black joy, right?
Mhm.
And Black membership in a historical rich narrative, right? And that kind of goes like, oh, okay, in America, you'll be introduced to Blackness via antebellum, chattel enslavement, right? What a way to begin your cultural story, right? So, is there a way to go before 1619, right? And you may not know it, but you before 1619, your great whatever would land on African soil at the continent, right? So, is there a way to depict a little bit of the beauty, the totality, the comprehensiveness of the continent of Africa? That way, if they believe and understand communal inheritance, they won't see their communal heritage in shackles. They'll see it in a continent that exists today at the highest level. But then you can't skirt by,
Right.
the enslavement period. You want to talk about that as a resilience story, right? As a resistance story, as the cultural glue that bonds us together. But then, as much as we can, tell our story from triumph, right? Reconstruction, civil rights, Black power, right? And how do we always tell a positive spin so when our babies have this cultural orientation, it's rooted in a grand nation, it's rooted in a problematic experience of the American democratic process, but then it's resilience. And there's constant examples of heroes and sheroes who are resilient, and they're the inheritors of that. And should they have a cultural legging, a foundation, they then can take the baton with a certain eye towards cultural progress and uplift, while simultaneously they have an individual life, right? We are cultural, but we are also individuals. We are individuals, we are cultural, but we're also part of humanity.
Right.
And those conversations, as much as we can have them in our own style and way, I think the babies at least land in a healthy sense of their collective culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely it does. Like you said, trying to blend the mixture of fear, but also upliftment.
Mm-hmm.
success and acknowledgement of, we are, we did great things.
Yeah.
And then to say like, yeah, we did those things simultaneously or additionally, we were also, in bondage. We were still coming out of the
Mm-hmm.
bondage, the Jim Crow eras, and now that kind of looks a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't feel inferior, or there isn't. If you feel inferior, it's because of that was a time where we were. Uh, However, there's greatness in our community. There's greatness in our heritage. It's not
Yeah.
something that is just new. This is
Right.
something that we've been doing for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to tell the stories. We need to
Mm-hmm.
tell the stories. We need to uplift the stories and circulate them. So now it doesn't become like a Black History Month.
Yeah.
Now it becomes, I knew this. This is March 15th, and I already knew
Yeah.
about Black history, and it's not
Yeah.
something that we celebrate in February.
Yeah. If we can teach our babies a cultural clock, a people
Mm,
measure their current moment based upon their historical clock, and there's episodic periods. And I always believe in almost over exaggerating the positive so that you root the foundation. And then as they mature, you then articulate the contradictions, right? You can get to a sort of a humanistic global mindset, but the pathway to that goes through culture, right? If you want to leapfrog culture and begin the humanitarian rhetoric, well, have you really discovered your humanity? You can't discover your own humanity until you go through your cultural piece of it, right?
yeah.
And then in the space of humanity, that's when you realize the beauty, the complexity, the contradictions of all people, including yourself. And it's in this capacity to critique that you can find solution,
Mhm.
of which our community is continuously on a journey of. And so I think it's just frequent, candid conversations, exposure again, an over exaggeration of the beauty of the narrative for a time. But then once the foundation is laid, the beautiful seeds have a sense of self, a sense of purpose. Then you have complexity, and you talk about what we need to overcome, and kind of that shapes our agenda going forward. And then, Pedrick, how do we use our individual life to advance on that? Right? You'll be a PhD. You have an individual pathway to that. You're in the nation's security protection. You have a certain pathway in that. But all of us have professions or potential influence that we can then advance cultural causes and or dynamics that we feel are a priority to us. But they don't become a priority to us absent intentionality. Because if
Mm.
there is not a deep, loved conversation around Blackness in the American context, a Black person will have an unhealthy sense of themselves because they don't get enough cultural food randomly in the space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what we got here? Look at Lawrence getting in here. I appreciate you, brother. Let me read your stuff. Just listening to the modern approach of parenting and how to create exposure and experience of what is real with most Black fathers and their families. Yeah, yeah. Brother Lawrence, if you're not already, man, check out Black Fathers on Facebook, dynamic group. It's compelling, it's revealing, it's motivating. Excellent dialogue. Thank you. I have 12 others watching within our room currently. Where you, whoa, go ahead. Where you watching from, Lawrence? Let us know. All right, we are getting close to the hour. So let me ask you the most critical question that men must have.
All right.
Do you have a tribe of men or fathers that feed you, challenging you, love you, critique you from a space of love? Tell me about your community, man.
I would say yes. Well, the question was fathers, so I'm going to say no,
Mm,
because not all of them are fathers.
okay.
I will say I do have a tribe of Black men who I seek, counsel from, and there are many of them who are fathers, but it's not just a specific tribe of fatherhood. And I will also say that that tribe extends to those younger than me, who I've had a chance to mentor, who
Beautiful.
are fathers. So I
Beautiful.
kind of take a little bit of everything, and knowing that just because I'm older than somebody, doesn't mean that I can't learn from their fatherhood and their situation, and vice versa. So I would say if I take all those, the up and the down, the
Mhm.
sides, I put all those together, that is my tribe, of a mix of fathers and the father, I should say not fathered right now.
Beautiful, Pedro. You need that. We all need that. And I'd recommend you continue to be intentional and get a few fathers in there If I can be one of them, brother, please let me know. I'm a
Yep.
father of 6. I've had some success and I've had some challenges, and we all need that. Plus, we need intergenerational. You know, I'm 54, you're 30. You know, there's things I might need to kind of ring your ear on as my sons are getting close to that age. But we definitely need those communities, and we need confidants, right? A lot of times, because we play in a traditional way, a patriarchal role of leadership, that we do that in silence, right? And some things that hopefully we are in good conversation with our partners, but sometimes we need to have different conversations with men. Lawrence is with 12 people at the Milwaukee Cigar Lounge. He's with his tribe right now.
What I'm talking
He's
about.
with his people, right? And they're over here watching us on J4, and they're getting some complimentary perspectives on their own station as father. And Lawrence, are you frat? Well, I'm a member of the only frat that the first and only, not only, but the first. I'm an alpha, so 06. I don't know if you are as well, Lawrence. But we have Garen commented, phenomenal, edifying conversation that is planting seeds of thoughts, ideals, and concepts, realities, etc., that I had not considered about fatherhood. Man, that's why this show is so fun and so important. Garrison, I need to get you on either as a future father conversation or a father to father. To be able to process some of these things now allows for a new dimension of preparation and foundational building, right? Raising healthy, grounded, independent young children. That's the goal. Garen showing love for his brother. Pedrick is a beautiful Black man with amazing experiences, and I am thankful for the platform in this conversation. Mandatory replay a few times. All right, I appreciate you.
So much. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, we got Travis, Jack Martin. How you been, brother? Salute to this conversation. Travis, I think from Texas, representing. We are at the final hour. If there are some questions, men in the boxes, feel free to share them. Pedrick, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to see if you have any questions. And after that, I'll give you final words in this space of father to father. Really appreciate this energy in the chat.
Oh man, I appreciate it as well. I don't have any questions right now. I would say that this is where I want to just say, like I've told you before off camera, salute to you, and I give you your flowers publicly,
Thank you,
just
brother.
as I have privately, to have these, to be intentional, to set up this space where anybody, more importantly, Black males and fathers, can come and be vulnerable. They can be honest. They can have these conversations. They can learn and bounce different ideas off of each other. It's powerful. It's powerful, and as we were talking about earlier, changing the trajectory of your family and taking that ego and having that pride. Well, you AJ are changing the trajectories of many families, those that you know every day, and those that you probably have never met. The impact of what you are doing will go far beyond this camera, and it will impact people for years to come. So I commend you, I salute you, and I say thank you for being intentional and having the idea, but more importantly, following through on your idea. It's no surprise to me. Like I said, over all the years that I've known you, this isn't anything new of what you've been doing this, but to be here and to be in this space, I love it. Like I said, I catch it,
Yes, sir.
and I watch it, and it's needed. It's needed. It's impactful. It's powerful, and you don't know how many people you're going to touch, and that you are. So I congratulate you. I salute you. And if there is anything that I can do, even jumping on these, I'm here for it, and you have my support.
Well, Pedro, I truly appreciate those words. You make an old man feel his warm fuzzies.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. And I do want to kind of maybe get to a point to where we have more than one, person on at a time, and I'll definitely tee you up. Beautiful folks listening in. I see a question I'm going to get to, but I put in there the J4 Conversations YouTube channel. If you want similar content, whether it's father to father conversations, two fathers, two sons chopping, or future fathers conversations, please feel free to kind of go over there, take a look at it, and subscribe and share as you see appropriate. One of the motivating factors for this channel is that 51% of our babies 51% of our babies are born into single parent households. That's a
Mm,
problem compared to 25% of other communities. Sometimes you'll hear numbers like 70, 80%, but that's the marital status of the mom. Doesn't mean that the dad's not engaged or there, but 51% of our babies are not there, uh, are raised in a single parent home. And so this is a conversation among fathers to be intentional about becoming fathers, but also to be a part of a community when going through the wonderful day-to-day love work of being a father. All right, so how does your couple of questions, Pedro?
let's do
We
it.
are. Let's do it. How do you navigate and prioritize your role as a partner, husband, and that of being a parent, father? Okay. How do you navigate your role as a partner, husband, and
Mhm,
that of being parent, love? Right? Because you have two dominant identities in
mhm.
monogamous couples: father, husband. All right. How do you manage that?
Oh man, the honest answer is trial and error.
Okay.
There are some days where my children need me more
Right.
than my spouse, and let me go back. They may need me equal. However, there are some days where I give more of my attentiveness to my children, and
Mm,
then there are other days where I want to say where I don't acknowledge them or I don't give my attentiveness because it is with my spouse. Then I'll
mm.
say there are other days where I take my attentiveness and I give it to myself. It's all
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it is all a trial and error, and you kind of just. I like to say it like if my wife is complaining like, hey baby, we need to spend some time together. Like, okay, kids, y'all gotta go to bed. The 2-year-old is down at 6:30 at night every night. The
Hmm.
oldest, he's on whatever he's doing, gaming, talking to his friends, winning the states, whatever. So that's about 7:30. So I know from 7:30 until about midnight, that's
Right.
where my time I can either be with my spouse or now doing schoolwork.
Right.
So it's just a trial and error, and you to be honest and to communicate about where you are and the time that you have. I try to make sure that my wife always knows my schedule, so that she knows the different things that I have obligation. But secondarily, and not secondarily, more importantly to that, I make time for family. I make time
Hmm.
for in my children. I make time for my wife, and I
Yeah.
build it into my schedule.
That's beautiful. The only thing I would add is that the two greatest classrooms for parenting is the dinner table and the car,
Mhm,
right? But as much as we can have look you in the eye conversations,
mhm,
that is time with your children, whether you're watching them do their thing or you're looking them in the eye and you're having some conversation, whether it's playful banter or instructional, whatever the case may be. But also have that equal kind of intentionality with your spouse. Look her in the eye because there's so much noise, franticness, and just managing a day-to-day routine, right?
mhm,
But especially when the babies are going to sleep at a certain time and your pattern of sleep has a couple of hours extended on that, how can you look each other in the eye in those particular spaces? And I think even in frantic times, it's that intentionality and to be seen, right? You see your wife, you see your children, and do they see you? Because
mhm.
oftentimes, dad is kind of left out of that equation. So powerful response, powerful response. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Travis in the house. All right, last one. How does your studies affect your parenting, Pedro? How do your studies? Okay, so how do you balance that PhD while being a father and a husband? And then what's next for you? That's an excellent way to close it out.
Okay, so the first half of that question is I'd like to think that my studies, the grind, the dedication, the reading, the researching, I like to think that they translate and they impact my oldest because he sees it. What I'm slowly realizing and learning is that just because I'm on this education endeavor does not mean that he's going to do the same. Does not mean that he wants to do the same. Does not mean that he really even cares. I think also it's kind of like we talked about earlier. He's at that teenage years where I've heard AJ say many times where he's forming his own identity, and kind of that clash between the parents and the teenage child, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of starting to grow a backbone a bit to say like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is what I think, and et cetera. And so I think that's kind of a lot of it, what it is right now. I would say, ask me that question maybe he's 15. I'd probably say ask me that question about 9 years from now,
Yeah, yeah.
to see how my studies and my PhD endeavors really impacted him and what he held on to. Because I think that's when I'll really be able to see it. As far as what's next for me, I'm not really sure. I told my wife I've promised her, and I don't really make promises often, but I've promised her that after I graduate, um, she got 6 months. She had 6 months of me where I would do nothing extracurricular.
Okay, okay.
And so that is my ode back to my family, because it's a great sacrifice. It's a great sacrifice for them, for anybody to go to embark on any educational feat, let alone a PhD. A lot of sacrifices and a lot of your time is taken away from the ones that love you the most. So she's got 6 months, and then after that, we'll see where I'm at. Then I probably see teaching in my future as a secondarily to my
Mm-hmm.
career, and we'll see. Stay tuned.
Man, that's beautiful. Lawrence, you had asked about frat. Pedrick, you in a fraternity, and then Lawrence, are you in a fraternity, or some of the men gathered there with you? What we represent?
Yeah,
Pedrick.
absolutely. So I'm in a service fraternity, Alpha Phi Omega, National Service Fraternity. It's been some amazing years of my life. I actually sit on the board of directors for that fraternity, which was something that was huge. The youngest in age and the youngest in fraternal years
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish that. And I've learned so much strategically about how to govern fraternities and sororities, and just some of the long term pictures that we kind of have to think about. And it's a lot more than just repping a set and putting on colors, or strolling on campus and stuff. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yep, yep. No, believe me, beautiful. I put the chat in the chat. That last post is actually an invite to the StreamYard. If Dr. Martin or Lawrence, you want to get in and be seen on this boxes, I'll give a couple of minutes here if you guys want to join in. Love to have you guys see your box. Really express appreciation for taking some time and listening to this powerful conversation. Pedrick, as we're kind of winding down here, unless someone wants to jump in, Dr. Martin, you're more than welcome. Lawrence, love to kind of see what y'all puffing on down there in I think it was Milwaukee. Pedrick, any last thoughts for fellow fathers or future fathers?
Yeah, so I'll get into that. I wanted to say shout out to my cousin Jaron. I just finally, figured out how to work the chat.
Okay.
So that was
Is
awesome.
he in here?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's in there. He was in there earlier. And then Dr.
Jaron, come
Martin.
on up if you in here.
Dr. Martin, congratulations to you on your PhD. And I don't know the years of when you got it, but now I'm in the space of recognizing, identifying Black people who have PhDs or EDDs, specifically Black males, because that is the next feat that I'm knocking on the door of. And so it's an amazing thing to see, to know that I'm not by myself, to know that
Yep.
people have come and done this before me, and that it's possible. Um, as a last words for fathers, or future fathers, uh man, off the cuff, off the top of my head, I would say, uh show your children vulnerability.
Mm,
Show your children vulnerability. Don't be afraid to cry in front of them, and show them that you don't have all the answers. I think
mm-hmm,
maybe at times, in my household, in my childhood growing up, it was my way or the highway. And
mm,
maybe sometimes we need to listen to another way, or maybe we need to just listen in general. So be open to vulnerability. Show your children that you don't have all the answers, you don't have it figured out, and be open to learning, be open to suggestions, and mainly what AJ said earlier is find a tribe,
mm-hmm,
find a group of people who been doing this thing a little longer than you.
mm-hmm.
Find some people who just started doing it, because knowledge evolves, and so people take different things and they put their own twist on it, and maybe it might be a twist that you haven't heard.
Right.
I think if you do that, you at least set yourself up you had set yourself up to be headed down the road of success. Now all you have to do is actually, take action and go towards it.
Man, that's a hell of a way to close it out. Dr. Martins hits us. He says, "Salute, Pedrick. You'll get there. Defended my dissertation October 2019. Keep grinding."
Yeah.
Man, you've actually given me a concept for the next or one of the upcoming presentations. Often when I talk to fathers, and I've said this myself with some regret, I don't care if you like me because I have a responsibility, right? That is a very interesting thing. And we're not, this is just sort of a teaser, but where fathers will assume such an important role that they're willing to raise their children at an uncompromising way, but are they risking the future relationship to their children? My children range from 31 to 17, and I definitely parented the older ones way different than I parented the younger ones, right? And with the older ones, I probably was of the mindset of, I'm going to parent you, and I don't care if you don't like me, right? But now that I'm dealing with them as young adults, I want them to like me, right? And there's variations of that in terms of relationship. And so maybe that'll be a nice conversation about how can fathers be necessarily strong when needed to be, but not to the detriment and risk of future father interaction where you'll need a different kind of relationship, a different kind of bond. We'll leave that there. Jordan Sparks, how are you? Jordan Sparks, LinkedIn is representing powerful conversation, first time father here, raising a young boy. Jordan, hit me up. I'm going to send you my, you're on LinkedIn. So hit me up in LinkedIn. We'll get you on the show. First time father here of a young boy. That'll be a great conversation. Hey, this has been wonderful. This is probably the most interaction I've had in the chat. That's a good sign in terms of the progression of the work there. But please check out J4 Conversations on YouTube. The link is in there. A lot of similar conversations with other good men. And then take a look at the original concept, which is two dads, myself, Gene Boyd, and our two sons, JB3 and Elias J. We'd welcome your input. Please like and give us a subscribe and share outward. And thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. On behalf of J4 Conversations, Pedrick, man, salute to you. Let me know when you get that PhD and reach out to me anytime, brother.
Always. Thank you.
All right. Stay on, brother. All right, J4 family, take care.